host. I'm your host, Carolyn, and we have just started recording, so please be aware. I'm your host, Carolyn, and I'm the Senior Community Program Manager for the World Reimagined, and I support all the coordinators in our host cities. This session is brought to you today by Esme Fairbairn Foundation and our presenting partners, Sky. We really appreciate this opportunity that enables us to create a space to connect and share knowledge with our communities UK-wide. So, please, if you need to enable some transcriptions, you can click the bottom button at the bottom of the screen that should say CC. And joining me today, we have a wonderful selection of panelists. We have Leyya Sattar, who is the co-founder of The Other Box. We have Sandra Griffiths, the founder of Red Earth Collective, and Tara Munroe, who is our very own Leicester Coordinator, but also the founder of Opal 22. So we welcome you all to join us in today's session. Over the next 50 minutes or so, we will be exploring breakthrough conversations and how to create and broker spaces that have courageous conversations. My guests are all working in spaces that drive change, and I'm looking forward to really exploring this topic with all of them and all of you. And we'll also have the opportunity for Q&A throughout the session, and feel free to add any questions that you have in the chat. Just a quick announcement, it's your last chance to apply for the Inspire grants. The deadline is tonight, so do not waste this opportunity to submit an event or an activity that you would like for us to fund through the World Reimagined. Please visit the website, which is theworldreimagined.org/what's going on, and you will find out all the questions that we ask and how you can apply. And of course, you can also submit videos to really get your application going a lot faster. So we're really looking forward to really seeing all the submissions that have come through. So to get us started, I think it'd be really great to get all our guests on screen, if they could join me on screen and switch on their videos. And I'd really like to ask what breakthrough conversations mean to you and why they are important. Why is this session important? So let me take it to Leyya first. Leyya, why are breakthrough conversations important?
I think in the world that we're living in today, breakthrough conversations open up a dialogue so we can make space for difference, and difference in many different aspects of the world, whether it is through race or religion, through age, through gender, through whatever it may be. So that's why I think it's important.
Thank you very much for sharing that. Sandra, what would you say is the importance of breakthrough conversations?
So I'm tending to describe it as breaking through rather than breakthrough, because it feels like it's a process of understanding the other, understanding other positions to create change. And a lot of the work that I do is about kind of creating opportunities where people have that aha moment, where they can say, right, okay, I understand. I have a better understanding of your context and your position to create change. So there's lots of inequalities in our society, in our communities. And for me, the breakthrough conversations is about breaking through those inequalities so that we can create greater social justice.
Thank you very much for sharing that. And I was wondering how long we were going to go before we said aha moment, because I was like, I know we're going to say it, but that is so true. Aha moment is so relevant. Well, I'd like to invite Tara to share what breakthrough conversations mean to you and why they're important.
Oh gosh, well, breakthrough conversations is kind of what I've developed my business on at the moment, because I run an organization called Opal 22 Arts and Entertainment, and we are constantly breaking barriers, whether it is through just the way society looks at certain communities and understanding how we can forge what I perceive as kind of true identity, normal identities, and make sure that they come into spaces like what I'm in today in the museum space. And there's an understanding of how both sides of those work, and not just kind of all information has to go in one direction. It should be more of a sharing, a sharing kind of environment that we can pick up on.
I really like
Does that make sense? Sorry.
That completely makes sense. I like the sharing, the equatorial kind of way about it. So yeah, breakthrough conversations are really important for the World Reimagined, because we want to ensure that this project really creates spaces that are welcoming and encourage courageous conversations. And it's important that we think about how we curate those spaces when we're engaging in our shared history, especially some of the tougher bits that maybe people are not quite comfortable to address yet. We need to think about how we do that in a really psychologically safe way. So thank you all for sharing a little bit more about what it is that you believe is the importance of breakthrough conversations. I would recommend that you introduce the participants introduce themselves in the chat and share any questions that they may have. And I want to take the platform to Leyya first, if you are ready to have a bit of a chat with me. So for those that don't know, could you tell us a little bit more about what the Other Box is?
Sure. So the Other Box is an ed tech company that's education technology, and we specialize in personal and professional development underpinned through diversity, equity, and inclusion training. We work a lot with businesses around the world, but we're also working with individuals too. And essentially, it's training on how to be an ally, how to understand your biases, how to counteract your biases, whether it's at work, whether it's outside of work, and then also how to have more inclusive communications, again, with people, whether that's in work, in society, wherever it may be.
Amazing. So where did the seed, where was it planted? How did the Other Box come to be founded?
The Other Box started in 2016, mainly out of frustration that the diversity conversation was really ramping up at the time, in terms of there was a lot happening sort of socially, politically at the time, Trump, Brexit, there was multiple different things happening. And the conversation was very much focused on gender, and gender was very binary, and it was mainly looking at white women's experiences at work. And so as a woman of colour from a working class background, I really wanted to challenge that to make sure when we are talking about diversity and inclusion, we are thinking about it from a more holistic, intersectional point of view, and that really wasn't being done at the time. So me and my co-founder, we actually met at a really undiverse diversity event where there was no sort of women of colour or Black women in the room. And we just basically had enough, because we knew we existed within these spaces. We were just never given the platform or kind of access to these spaces. So that's what we really wanted to challenge. So fast forward 6 years, the way that we exist now is that we've had the opportunity to work with over 100 companies, over thousands of people around the world. And then we also have a community that we support who come from marginalized backgrounds too.
Amazing. And that was my next question. What kind of communities are you really working with? So what are the challenges do you see to kind of building learning platforms, learning environments?
There's a few different challenges. I think for a lot of people, they want change to happen overnight. They want those sort of quick fixes, that magic wand kind of aspect. But what we're after here is systemic change, and that does take time. It takes time, effort, and it also takes budget as well. And so for a lot of people, they kind of want those sort of overnight quick fixes, whereas actually it takes a lot of self-reflection, especially from senior leadership, but also everybody in the team. Because I think for a lot of people, they kind of see diversity, equity, and inclusion as this sort of abstract thing that, the employee resource group made up mainly of Black and brown people are going to sort this out, or HR are going to sort it out, rather than actually looking at, okay, we're thinking about inclusive workplace cultures. Culture means everybody, which means we all have a responsibility to do this work and to really be addressing it in everything that we do. So rather than seeing so diversity and inclusion right now, we've seen a lot of businesses, it's kind of treated as like a side dish of like, okay, well, we'll think about that another time, rather than actually how do we embed it and make it the main ingredient of everything that we do.
Yeah. And I like to think that because of working in these spaces, sometimes it's really overwhelming to be thrown all this information, especially around like inclusive practices and what you can be doing on a personal level, what the company should be doing. And I think a lot of the time they're looking for role modeling from a senior level. So do you think there's anything you've observed in kind of like working with organizations of getting this learning in that is like really relevant to this conversation?
I think a lot of it is just having really vulnerable conversations. no one likes to be called a racist, but they don't actually understand that we're all racist and we're living within a racist structure. But actually for some people, for a lot of people, that's still really conceptual. So for a lot of people, it's a complete lack of awareness and education. So, and they're scared to have those conversations. And I noticed that a lot with the senior leadership teams, is that they're so scared to have these conversations. They're scared of getting it wrong. So actually, how do we open a dialogue, and how do we kind of create a space where they can have those conversations? As an organization at the Other Box, we very much kind of, we stay away from using language of safe spaces, because ultimately we can't determine what's safe for an individual. So, you know, we used to use this language around safe spaces for our community, which are from marginalized backgrounds. But even then, what we realized is that we can't create safety for another person, because what safety is for us may not be for that other person. But what we can do is cultivate environments which are judgment-free, blame-free, shame-free, so you can explore. And sometimes that kind of means just listening and kind of letting the sort of, especially senior leadership, speak, and then actually kind of like creating the space for them to then, once they've spoken, kind of got it off their chest, how can we educate you so you actually meeting you where you are, rather than kind of just expecting you to be on a level where actually a lot of people aren't up there.
Yeah, and I think you made a really good point as well, in like the D&I people all being Black and brown, and it's all, the responsibility falls on them to have all the answers. And I always say that I cannot speak for everyone, you know, just because I'm Black, I cannot speak for all Black people. So it's really important, I guess, to recognize how much emotional labor that is putting on individuals who are already kind of dealing with their own thing, but also understand that sometimes it does take a bit of emotional labor in order to have those breakthrough conversations. I know that as a facilitator, I have to be prepared to explore my own biases and my own challenges in order for me to be able to relate to people in the room when I'm sharing. So thank you for that. Now, I know that you have a learning platform and you have loads of resources that you put out to organizations, but is there any kind of resources that people could download that they could utilize from the Other Box?
Yeah, so we're going to be looking at how we can kind of give those resources off our website. So definitely keep an eye out on theotherbox.org. Sign up to our newsletter, because as soon as they're ready, you'll be the first to hear about it. But essentially what we'll be doing, and also we're launching our YouTube channel very soon, and that'll be so many different resources for how to have these conversations, whether you are from a marginalized background or whether you are kind of in senior leadership or within the workplace wanting to do better. You want to basically be a better human being to other human beings. So definitely check out our YouTube channel too, which is launching very soon, which will be full of information and hacks and tools and frameworks and knowledge on there as well.
That's very exciting. I'm definitely going to make a link to that in our toolkit so everybody can have access to that. And that sounds really good, because I really love your privileged fingerprint score. I love that exercise because it really hones home a lot of things that people didn't realize. So thank you so much, Leyya. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull you back in a little bit later, but I wanted to pull in Sandra to join us on screen. Thank you so much. Hi Sandra.
Hi everyone.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us. So would you please tell people about what Red Earth Collective do?
Yes, I'll tell you about what Red Earth Collective does, as well as another organisation that I'm going to draw on during this conversation. So Red Earth Collective is a West Midlands-based art and mental health organisation. So we use the arts to stimulate conversations about mental ill health, challenging some of the stigma that people in our community still hold around having a mental ill health. So we work with people with a living and lived experience of mental health problems who are creatives or who have an aspiration to be creative, and they use that creativity to produce work, whether it's drama, whether it's spoken word, whether it's film. We support those individuals to create work, and that work is either presented as part of an exhibition or as part of a festival, or it's a performance. And as part of those presentations, there's conversation that flows from that. People see the work, view the work, see the performance, and we facilitate conversations with the audience or the viewer who attends our performances. And we work across different settings. So people in prisons, there's people in mental health wards, medium secure units, as well as people in the community. We work across all different settings with people who've got a living experience who want to create work to enable conversations to happen around living with mental illness. And you can live with a mental illness and still have a fulfilling life. So that's one, that's one of the organizations that I've been running now since 2013, although I've always used the arts in my work. I have a mental health background. And the other organization, which I'll draw on, as I said earlier, for this conversation, is Catalyst for Change, which is an African and Caribbean mental health hub in the West Midlands. And we aim to address systemic racism that prevents Black communities from thriving, and also do some capacity building with organisations who want to find alternative ways of healing.
Amazing. That sounds really interesting. And I think obviously you're kind of having the most difficult conversations and conversations that have the biggest stigma in the community. So in what age range, who are you kind of encountering most of the time when you're working in the community? Is it specific, or can you work with anyone? I love the fact that you're using art as an intervention tool, which is very much the ethos of the World Reimagined. But in terms of communities, are you working with young people or?
Yeah, so we're working with adults over 18. We hope to do more work with under 18s, but most of our work is with adults over 18, and usually probably over 25, and mainly African and Caribbean communities, but other racialized communities as well. But most of our work has been very much focused on African and Caribbean communities, and obviously there's diversity within that. Yeah. So, and we pay attention to some of the intersectionality within our communities, because sometimes we can describe our communities in very mono terms in terms of, faith and sexual orientation. And a lot of the work that I've noticed, I've been around for a while, over the last 30 years, when we talk about, African, Caribbean or Black mental health, it's very gendered, it's very male. So we're increasingly doing more work with women.
Amazing. And could you explain what intersectionality is for those that don't know?
Yeah, I guess in essence, it's about the different identities that we hold. So I'm a Black person, but I'm a Black woman, I'm straight, I no faith. It's really addressing the different identities that each of us hold. We're not just one thing. Yeah, and that's fluid and it can shift and change, and we express that in very different ways. But it's about the different identities that can sometimes, as a result of having those different identities, we can experience oppression. Yeah. So as a Black woman, I will experience discrimination, being a Black person, being a Black woman, being an older woman.
All these factors kind of,
and all these factors shape our experience. And part of our work is to kind of bring to the fore and challenge the narrative around how we understand the Black communities. And often I think that systems, and when I talk about the systems, I mean, in my world, I'm talking about mental health systems, I'm talking about the criminal justice system, because unfortunately a lot of Black men in particular enter the mental health system through the criminal justice route, that they will see Black people in very mono terms, and not understand that, we have all these different identities, and for some Black people, being Black isn't their main identity. It might be their gender, it might be their sexual orientation, or it might be all of those things.
And it very much depends on the environment.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Well, I think it would be really great if we got kind of like a breakdown into like how you have brokered these difficult conversations. I know we've had a discussion of the different levels, so maybe you could explore that a little bit more with us.
Yeah, so I guess I want to share in this conversation some of the difficult conversations that we have at both Red Earth Collective and at Catalyst for Change around race inequalities that people with mental ill health experience. And so some of you may be aware that for many years there's been some recurring stats and facts about the experience of Black people with mental ill health, overrepresented in the severe end of mental health services, lack of access to talking therapies, all of those kind of issues continue to be, unfortunately, the inequalities that services and the community want to see some racial justice. And as part of the work, we're bringing together services, systems, and the community and people with a lived experience to have a conversation. How can we shift and change this? And as you can imagine, there are very difficult conversations about the different privileges and powers, or the lack of power and privilege that people with mental ill health find that they have, and the privileges that some people in the system feel, are very reluctant to acknowledge and address. And what I have done over many years is to adopt what is called an appreciative inquiry approach to those conversations. So there's a big push, as you may be aware, about co-production and bringing everybody together, the community, people with a lived experience, and practitioners together to co-produce the change that everybody wants to see. But how do you do that? And that's why I said earlier about the breakthrough conversations. It's a breaking through conversations, because it takes time. We're challenging a system that actually, even though they recognize that there are inequalities and they're recurring, it means that to really shift and change things, it means giving up some power and doing things differently when there's a lot of incentive for things to stay as they are, even though they create the inequalities that people are experiencing. The people are benefiting quite significantly from being in the position and enjoying the privileges that they have in a system. So our work is to kind of create spaces where we can have a conversation about, well, actually, how do we begin to, one, system hearing what the impact of the inequality is, the impact of their practice on services. How do we create space where they listen to that? Yeah. Listen to that without being defensive, without saying, well, that doesn't happen here, it must have happened somewhere else. So there's how do you create a space where people listen? How do you create a space where people understand people's different positions? Yeah. So it is difficult for if you are in receipt of services and you are unhappy with the services, to be hearing staff's problems and concerns and their lack of power, staff on the ground. That's difficult to hear, because actually all you as a service you can hear is that you don't have any power. You have power. So part of our work is to kind of explore with the different groups of people, different positions in any system, there are examples of where things are working well, where there is good practice, where people have been able to, practitioners have been able to listen to the service user, or where they've decided to do something really differently so that they're meeting the needs of the service users. So we invite in those spaces an opportunity to hear, there's something must be going quite well here. Let's hear about some of those pockets of good practice, those golden moments where things have really gone well. and let's encourage people to find out how did that happen in a system where we're hearing a lot of noise saying things are not going well. So we invite stories of what's going well, and we inquire into what made that work well. And then we invite people to imagine, what would it be like if we had more of that? How could we grow more of that? And then we examine, okay, so what do we need to do to make that happen? Yeah, and then do the kind of delivery. So there's that 4 stages of an appreciative inquiry approach: discovery, dream, design, and deliver. That can take some time, and it does take some time, because you're creating almost like a countercultural way of talking about dealing with the problem. We're not starting with the problem, we're starting with inquiring into an issue, and hearing and inviting stories of where things have gone well, because sometimes you can privilege that think there's nothing going well in the system. And that's not always true, as we have found, that there are staff and there are service users who are having, are able to kind of create change, and the service user is having a better experience than perhaps others. So it's about inquiring into that experience and finding out more about how that works. So that's just one example of the way in which I've developed over the years. Having difficult conversation where there are sometimes polarized views and very angry views about the other in a system.
Yeah. And
does that make sense?
It completely makes sense, and I hope it made sense for everybody else. I think it's really interesting because you're actually going into spaces where they're changing behavior and practices and trying to help them understand. There must be a lot of defensiveness that you encounter, not only with kind of systems, institutions, but with the individual, especially when dealing with these difficult kind of conversations that people don't really want to have or are not accustomed to having. Yeah. Do you find that there's a lot of defensiveness there?
There is defensiveness, and there is a lot of work that we need to do to get to a point where we can bring people around the table. And having the right kind of frame for the conversation is really important. So an example is that when I was approached by a team in a mental health trust to have a conversation about why are there so few black men using their service, that was the title, that was for them the question. And when I had started to have some initial conversations with the staff team as we were preparing, a number of them were really pissed off because they were actually, I'm having, there are black men that are using the service. So we changed the frame and to inquire into the experiences of staff working with black men in the system, which then allowed us to hear, it allowed people to engage with, the conversation about how to improve the number of black men. So finding the right frame is important, and not privileging always what the leaders or the senior managers think is the problem. Because they will, their experience is different to staff on the ground. So it's for us, it's about kind of really consulting. And as part of the prep, you're kind of having conversations with the staff, so you're understanding, okay, this is how, this is the kind of topic, this is the agenda, not necessarily what the senior managers who've commissioned you have said is the problem, because it may not always be the problem. And so that lowers to a certain extent the defensiveness, because you've done some prep. You've talked to people. You've not just said, well, senior management commissioned me to do this, and this is what we're going to do. That never works in my world. So for us, it's, doing that prep, that consultation piece, as well, and speaking to service, all the stakeholders, so that you understand their position. And that takes some time, and you can't rush it. because the defensiveness, the anger, the frustration, you're having to, and naming some of that, just naming that this is going to take time, and knowing and naming that actually it's going to be difficult. There's pain here, there's anger here. Yeah. Naming that is really important for people.
Yeah. And I think that there seems to be a very collaborative approach in the way that you work with organizations, and that probably helps them be a little bit more receptive to your guidance or your strategies in terms of how to, you know, broker these spaces. So is there anything that you're working on that you would love to share a little bit more about, like anything exciting that you should hear about?
I guess one of the things that at Catalyst I'm working on, we've recently partnered with Black Thrive Global. Black Thrive Global started off in Lambeth, and it's recently got funding, 10-year funding, to expand its partnership, which includes us at Catalyst in Birmingham and Haringey. And in essence, that programme is about looking at how do we hold systems to account for the changes that the community want to see. So how do we do that systems change piece? And how do we support the community to create their own data, that has meaning to them, and support them in developing alternative ways of healing. So we just started on that journey, but we're building on many years of work that some of us have been involved with to pull together a strategy that enables us to think, okay, how does a community hold a system to account? How do we do that? So we're shifting focus from systems engaging the community to create the change, but saying actually the community needs to hold the system to account, and the community can challenge the data and repurpose the data that the system creates about us. So through a different lens, we will interpret the data that the system collects, because the system collects data for the system. And so, we're looking, okay, so you're collecting data, but what are you doing with that data? And is your analysis of the community one that we share or understand or recognize? And sometimes it's not. And shifting our thinking about a community in need, a community that's got some assets and some strengths that can help create the change that we want to see. So we're at the beginning of this journey. It's really exciting. So if people want to find out more about this work, then do have a look at our website, catalystforchange.org.uk, and also Black Thrive Global. It's exciting because it's like we're really feeling that we have a power to control, not power to control, but power to create the change that we want to see.
You can influence it. You got the power to influence it.
We've got the power to influence. Yeah, we're really flexing our muscles here, and really saying to the system, come on, let's, what does co-production really mean here?
And not in a performative way.
And not in a performative way. This has got to be meaningful and really supporting community members who want to be actively involved. We had an assembly on the 14th of May, and we had over 100 people there. And people are ready. They want to kind of be part of the change. And really embrace the notion of a collective responsibility, that we're all responsible for the change.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that, Sandra. I will pull you back in a little bit. We'll do some questions, but I'd like to invite Tara to the screen. Hi, Tara. Are you there with us? Let me see if Tara can hear us. Hopefully we've kind of delved into it. It's much more nuanced than just having a conversation, but I'm hoping that our next guest will be able to engage with us. Tara, are you there? I'm hoping that you're there. I can see you on there. I've just asked you to unmute. So hopefully Tara will join us in a little bit. But I think it's really important for us to kind of acknowledge that especially with the World Reimagined, especially with our journey of discovery framework, we are asking people to go into this journey, and part of the road might be a little bit difficult, but we're asking that people do really engage in that as much as they possibly can, because all of this learning is important. It's not just Black history, it's everyone's history. So we really want to make sure that everybody has a chance to get in there. Let me see if Tara's back. Let's see, Tara, where are you at?
I'm here.
Yay! Hi Tara, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm sorry, I'm rushing. I've got two different workshops going on. I've got a pottery one and I've got a textile one over here, and the textile one just needs a little bit more of my attention. So apologies.
I love the multitasking though. I'm not mad
one
at it.
One ear in. Just kind of go from one part of the building to the next. But yeah.
If you have to run off, we'll totally understand. But Tara, would you tell everybody a little bit more about Opal 22? Maybe they'll understand what you're multitasking between right now.
Okay, Opal 22 is an arts and heritage organisation. We specialise in Black excellence. We do a number of projects. We've currently got a national project in, which is all about caster paintings, which is the room that I'm in now. So these paintings here are one of the first forms of racial classifications found in pictorial form. We have a collection of events going on, both of these that I'm talking about, over the next year. And then there's going to be a massive exhibition which talks all about the critical race theory, understanding what the paintings are, the genres of the paintings. They're going to be restored and brought back to their beauty. So there's a lot going on with that. We take over on Black History Season. We do a number of different events. We do Leicester's first and only Black History Bus Tour. We do women inspirational events where we have spoken word artists and music, and you name it, we do it. Basically, we go into schools, we go into prisons. I do work with probation service when they were looking at how they can change the way they do things when they're talking within the Black community. So we've done stop and search videos for the police. We do a lot of documentary side of things. Mm-hmm. I juggle a lot, basically, but I also do the EDI training for quite a few of the East Midlands at the moment, museum and heritage organisations, and just different things. I'm always here, there and everywhere, but yeah, juggling a lot, basically. And obviously the community coordinator.
The big old elephant in the room.
yeah.
Well,
together.
Well, you're obviously working in so many spaces that are about breakthrough conversations, from the art spaces to EDI. So, how did you get connected to these spaces, or what drove you to work in these spaces?
Oh gosh, I kind of fell in it, if I'm honest. I never dreamt that I'd be working in a museum. I just wasn't, way cooler than that, surely. But yeah. So
yes, you are, Sarah. Yes, you are.
Yeah, so yeah, I was waiting for that bit. Yeah. No, I went into university initially. I started off, I always wanted to work for myself, and that was the main thing. And I started off working in retail and owning my own shops. And then I went bankrupt, unfortunately. I tried to grow bigger anyway, I went bankrupt. And I knew I couldn't work for somebody else. So I thought I have to go to university. I did that. I did a design management and innovation course. At the end of that, there was a call out for the last thing for us to do a live project. We were looking at museums and how we bring the museums into 21st century, how they get a more diverse audience through, and get young people in. My team ended up winning the design managers of the year. And then I was asked by the museum to come and do some work here, doing various workshops for young people. They'd had a big exhibition that was on, which was Style Up, which was in connection with the V&A. I worked on that, ended up doing quite a bit here, and they asked me to come on board. They asked me to get a job and do my master's at the same time, which I totally refused, because I thought, I'm not an academic. I don't do education very well. I'm not great. This is not the one for me. And luckily, the managing director that was here at the time had kind of gone, we need you, please, and twisted my arm. He must have called me 10 times in the 1 week, and I was just like, no. I did it. I came here. It was the best job I ever had. I spent 2 years here. I absolutely love the building still. I left here 10 years ago. I ended up, well, after my contract finished, was the time when Renaissance shut down. So a lot of people lost their job and was made redundant. I started doing freelance projects with various museums across the country and going into different places. And then I was doing a lot of things where I was coming up with project ideas and having to go to organizations and saying, this is really good. Can we do this with you? I'm not an organization, so can I do it under your banner? And then being at the end of it and them going, look what we've done. Look at this amazing project. Look how wonderful we've done. And not even getting a shout out for the work that I'd done. So I decided that wasn't the greatest thing for me. I opened up this organization 6 years ago. And one thing it proved, that there's definitely a need for it. You know, there needs to be that bridge between communities that are doing amazing things and got a real great message to give out and have some great people that want to learn more. And these public organizations that have been used to just owning all the property and owning all the language and owning all the teaching around it and really keeping that quite centralized to themselves. So this was a way of me kind of correcting a few wrongs and making sure that the community where I've come from is put front and center in that conversation always. And I think that's why I'm trusted within the community that I work in. And I'm also trusted in the community, in the museums community, because I'm very straight. And I will, you know, if I think something is not good for the people that I care about, then I just say, no, that's not going to happen. But I try to do it in a polite manner sometimes. Yeah, no, I do.
Well, this is why we love you at the World Reimagined, because it's great to have somebody with your experience and your knowledge and your insight of the community working and representing us in Leicester. So I know how we came to connect for this project, but what was your kind of driving force for wanting to connect with the World Reimagined?
The project itself just seemed to hit a lot of my targets that I deal with kind of daily. You know, I'm always all about getting that message out, the full message, understanding that we didn't start in enslavement. We didn't only just arrive when Europeans entered Africa. There is a much bigger story behind that. And just the knowledge that there is no British history without Black history. Once we get our heads around that, and not, when I say we, I don't just mean Black, brown people, we as the UK, we can move forward. But without that, we're stuck. If only half the people can agree that this is the truth, this is where we is, or you know, that there were Black people in World War I and II, you know, until we kind of have those conversations, those dialogues, and make it make sense to people. We didn't just come here on a, you know, on a ship, boat, wherever, and just go, hi. You know, where we were never here before. We never existed. It didn't happen. You know, there was a big civilization. There was, you know, when we come, you know, when we think of it realistically, Europe is the last civilization to ever come about. You know, we're the last on the list. So why are we trying to navigate as if we were the be all and end all? So,
and that's on that. I like that. Felt like a mic drop right there. But thank you for sharing that. I'm very aware of the time is fastly speeding past us, but you've all made some really great points. And I think some of the takeaways that, you know, I think have jumped out at me have been that, you know, we really should understand that this is a process that is about co-creation, co-development, collaboration, and working with the community and with organizations, but also taking opportunities to really have conversations with those that are dissimilar to you, that allow you to expand your perspective. And it's about exploring and sharing your own kind of biases and the system's biases, and also creating a space where others feel some form of security to be able to share theirs. And really, again, it's all about safe spaces. So I've got a few questions for all of you. So please do join me on screen, because a few questions just to lead us off. So I think we'll start with you, Leyya. What would you say is your advice? Leyya, I keep saying this wrong. I'm so sorry, Leyya. What would you say is your advice for kind of really approaching those conversations, but on a personal level? Because I know you very much work at an organizational level, but what would your advice be for an individual?
What I would really advise actually is to understand what your stress response is. And for a lot of people, whether you are kind of on the end of, let's say, for example, you're on the sort of receiving end of a microaggression, or whether you are the microaggressor, for a lot of people, they kind of go into that sort of fight or flight, freeze or fawn. And so actually, if you understand your stress response, you're able to then handle those situations with a more clearer head. So you're able to kind of manage your emotions in that moment as well. And so something that we talk about a lot at the other box is the STAR technique. So stop, think, act, and then review. Caroline, I'm sure, like with the work that we're doing, you're very familiar with the STAR by now. Essentially, it works both ways. So whether it is giving or receiving feedback, whether it is speaking up in the moment, stop. So you can take in all of the information of what's just happened, think about what you want to do, take the action, and then review afterwards. And I think it just really helps people to kind of not be led straight from the heart, but actually use their head in those moments. But for a lot of people, they just panic, they don't know what to do. And so actually that's why we always just suggest regulate your nervous system, so you're able to then approach it from a clearer point of view.
And also just giving yourself time to really just process and not respond immediately. That's such a good technique to share with everybody. What would you say is your advice, Sandra?
There's some similarities to what Leyya's just said, but I'll start with just paying attention to the impact of the communication that you have. So what impact do you want to have? Because sometimes we can be reactive without really thinking about, if I say this, what's going to be the impact? Is that the impact that's going to be helpful for me? So, I found that really helpful whenever I've wanted to tell somebody about themselves, if they've said something that I'm really pissed off about. So, okay, so if I say this, this is just going to escalate, right? This isn't, this is going to escalate. So, okay, so being mindful about the impact of your communication. So that's the first thing for me. The second thing is that sometimes when you're working on programs like mine, and I guess to a certain extent, as yours, Carolyn, and Leyya, we can feel that this responsibility to resolve things and to not acknowledge that there's a collective responsibility here, but be clear about your position. What you can contribute, and inviting and encouraging people to take collective responsibility. We're all in this together, that we don't have to, because we've set up an organisation that's paying attention to this agenda, that we are the sole responsibility. And people will want to position you in that way, that you sort it. You're paid to do this, you set this up. So there's something for me about, being clear about one's role and sphere of influence, but there's a collective responsibility here. And lastly, the self-care piece. This is, it's hard work. Sometimes you kind of just feel like, really? With some people. And so for me, it's kind of just develop some self-care, and your suggestion, Leyya, is absolutely spot on and great, but, develop some self-care strategies, take some time out, particularly if you're starting up, you can be on this 24/7, you're really passionate about something, you don't have a break. I, constantly speak to friends who are doing similar work and never had a holiday or a break for 2 years, 1 year. And they say it sometimes with a badge of honor. I'm thinking, no, that's not good. That is not, it's not good. Self-care, do something, to kind of just take yourself away and to do something that you really enjoy, even if it's sleep. Yeah, whatever it,
Yeah,
whatever it
some
is.
good self-care right there.
Self-care.
I think what's really interesting is how do we share some practical tips for people who are going to be putting on events or activities for creating these spaces to talk about some of the subjects that we are highlighting? Is there any practical tips, especially when it comes to facilitation, like facilitating these spaces and planning events? Is there anything that you kind of have observed or learned from planning these kind of engagements that you could share with us?
Okay, is that for both of us?
Yeah, whoever would like to go first.
Okay. I think it, you know, for me, it's working in a team to plan, yeah, and to give yourself enough time to really think, you know, to think about what is it that you're wanting to create. If I think about the assembly that we designed and delivered recently, that was it was a team effort, and it took 6 months of planning. And I know in this space that many of us are used to kind of putting together an event really quickly, because sometimes we don't have that length of time to plan. But planning over a 6-month period for us really helped our mental health and well-being, and really helped us to think about, actually, how do we want this event to land with the people that are attending? So for me, give yourself enough time and space to plan and to create a small planning group. And you know, up until recently, I didn't really, you know, I tended to do things very much on my own, or with, you know, 1 or 2 people. But I'm learning as I get older that actually, you know, a team approach to plan, to think through things, it is really important, and not to rush it. That's what I'd say.
I think that's very good. I mean, obviously, if you have more time to plan, but it's very important to think about the impact that you want to have. One of our questions on the grant, one of our grant application questions is like, how do you want people to feel, and like the outcome? And Tara has just apologized and said bye. She's just had to jump off. I figured she went a bit quiet, and I was like, what's going on? But before we leave, because we've got like 4 minutes left. So this is a bonus question, because I think, again, it's very easy to focus on who you want to support and who you want to reach and who you want to engage, and it can turn into an exclusionary space. So any tips for, I don't know, combating exclusionary events or practices so that people can think about, all right, how do they get everybody involved in the conversation, even if they're people who are at the beginning of their journey or are far ahead in the journey of understanding whatever the, you know, topic or the focus of the event is? I'll take that to you, Leyya.
It's quite a big question, actually.
It is. It's a bang. That's why I put it as a bonus.
Yeah, because it ultimately it's just how you communicate about the event or whatever it may be, whether it's an event or a forum or whatever it may be, like online, in person. It's about how you communicate what your sort of objectives are of that space, and then actually where you advertise it, how you talk about it, and then getting people involved that way. For a lot of people, I think they just don't know things exist. So actually, how can you communicate it in a way and reach those people, whether it's, I don't know, news boards. News boards, so I meant. News boards. That's what
we knew where you were coming from.
Same wavelength. I love that. Yeah, I think the biggest barrier that we have in society is communication. Yeah, and everyone is very bad at it. Really bad at it.
Yeah.
Whether it's listening skills, whether it's just being in dialogue with people. For so many people, they're just so defensive, myself included. So it's about raising your awareness to that. But essentially, like, it's, you know, there's only so much that you can do in terms of creating those spaces, and then actually how do you invite people and get people along who are aligned with your vision and want to make a difference. So it's a huge question, and
it is huge, and you know, well done there, Leyya. I mean, I think for us, us also, it's making sure that our networks, that we make our network, we support our networks and inform our networks, that they can tell their networks about the work that we're doing, and investing in maybe individuals who, who are good networkers. There are some people that we know in our community are good networkers and good connectors, and investing in them, building the relationship with them so that they then, have a clear idea about what you're trying to do and can communicate that to their network. And through, for me, that I've found that that's been a really invaluable way of reaching people that we cannot reach. And then they decide, those connectors, those people, they know how to reach their people, whether it's social media or whether it's whatever it is, but we're communicating, giving them the core message, and then they take that core message and interpret it in the way that they know, that the people that they know will understand. And see,
kind of having ambassadors in
those ambassadors, a bit like what you're doing with this program. You've got your connectors in each locality, and
and it's so important for understanding the different
twist on how they communicate it to their people.
I completely agree. And I think one of the things I've learned is that you have to be prepared to share with everyone. And I think that that's so important, to be able to share who you are and how you feel, because especially as a facilitator, the natural place of landing is that you are the source of knowledge. And I always come in, I'm like, no, I'm an enthusiast. I'm also growing and learning. And, you don't have to have the answers for everything, but you definitely want to create a space where people can feel like they can ask questions and they can connect with you and not feel the fear of being judged. Judgment is the biggest one. But I can see it's now 8 o'clock, so I do not want to keep you any longer. I know this was only a short conversation, but it's always fantastic to be able to connect with individuals like yourself and the amazing organizations that you're working with. So thank you again for joining us, and please do check out the other box and the wonderful work and the free resources in the YouTube channel, and also check out Red Earth Collective, Catalyst for Change, Thrive Network. These are all amazing organizations that you should be following. Again, the Inspire sessions are part of our Inspire community program that's funded by Esme Fairbairn Foundation and supported by our presenting partner, Sky. So if you missed any part of this session, it's available it'll be recorded now, it'll be there forever. And it's going to be on our YouTube pages and in our toolkit when we launch it a little bit later. Please do check out our upcoming sessions, which will be on continuing the conversation kind of around breakthrough conversations, building network and encouraging allyship with Lee Lawrence, one of our board, but Afiwi and Restless Beings, which are two great organizations I'm looking forward to introducing you to. So thank you again to all of you. Wonderful. Leyya, Sandra, Tara.
Thank you.
Thank you again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your evening. See you next time.
Yes.
Bye.
Take care. Bye. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ooh.